Okay. I've got a bone to pick with a certain publication.
Mm-hmm.
You may have heard of them. They're called Rolling Stone magazine.
Ugh.
Luckily, none of my friends read their, so-called Rolling Stone magazine. But they put out a list that is just it's just the subject of much conversation. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. And it's the nature of this kind of list is that it's about prompting this kind of conversation. So
we are 100% playing into the thing that they're trying to get us to do.
And yet here we go.
Yeah. Normally we would have something valuable to talk about, but no. This week we were talking about just flimsy
we
pop
at
culture
this
stuff.
And we couldn't talk about anything else. Like, are you kidding me? What?
Yeah.
No.
The list in question is the 200 greatest singers of all time that Rolling Stone put out this week. And I saw it and I sent this to Dan and I said, this is something we probably need to consider.
Yeah.
And not more than 90 seconds later, Dan, who was completely oblivious to this, living his life,
just
as happy as he could be.
A perfectly fine day.
90 seconds later, I just get ... I have thoughts, period. And that's all I got.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of stuff to get into, but the general consensus is it's a bad list.
It's a bad list.
It's not great.
No.
And we're going to get into all the reasons why it's not great, but let's both sides this argument.
You going to start with their side?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt to a degree.
We can quote the disclaimer they start the article with.
Right. So the whole story goes that back in 2008, they released the 100 greatest singers of all time. And the way that they came to that particular list is they asked a bunch of musicians, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So they asked a bunch of well-known musicians who they think the greatest singers are. And when you're talking about well-known musicians, you're talking about musicians of a certain era, and they pretty much chose all the same classic rock dudes.
They picked their era
that you would pick.
Yeah.
It lacked a certain amount of diversity, let's just say. We won't go any further than that.
No, but you don't have to.
So this list was, I think, their attempt at remedying that situation. And they did it by asking a different group of people, music journalists, people on their staff, contributors, that kind of thing. And what they ended up with was twice the amount of people in a significantly more diverse group of singers. Mm-hmm. And personally, I have no issue with that.
Right.
There were a number of people on the list that I was not familiar with, but I would be willing to look into based on the information provided in the list. That being said, there are some absolute shenanigans on this list.
There are. And it's really easy to look at this list and say, oh, this entrant on it is more technically competent than another. Here's what they literally said. This is a quote from the top of the article.
Yep.
Before you start scrolling and commenting, keep in mind that this is the greatest singers list, not the greatest voices list. Talent is impressive. Genius is transcendent. Sure, many of the people here were born with massive pipes, perfect pitch, and boundless range. Others have rougher, stranger, or more delicate instruments. As our write-up for the man who ended up at number 112 notes, Ozzy Osbourne doesn't have what most people would call a good voice, but boy, does he have a great one. That could apply to a few people here. So we're not just talking about chops, right? We're talking about, as they say, what mattered most to us, I'm quoting here, what mattered most to us was originality, influence, the depth of an artist's catalog, and the breadth of their musical legacy.
Okay.
Nonetheless, even those rubrics considered, I think there are real problems on this list.
I concur. So let's get a couple of things out of the way.
Yeah.
Beyond, let's say, number 12, no notes.
Above, you mean? 12 and up?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's just mention the names. 12 and up, shall we?
Do you have it, or do I need to?
All right. Starting at 12. Number 12 is... well, let's start at 11. Number 12 is problematic.
We'll
come back to 12. All right. 11 and up. Little Richard.
Yep.
Al Green.
Yep.
Otis Redding.
Yep.
Beyonce.
Mm-hmm.
Stevie Wonder.
Yep.
Ray Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Mariah Carey. Billie Holiday, Sam Cooke, Whitney Houston, and number 1, Aretha Franklin.
Again,
No notes.
nope.
I'm on board with every part of that.
There's not a single one that I could think of that could
I'm on
go
board
above
with every single
any of those
one.
folks.
Now, let's talk about number 12.
So here's where things start to kind of fall apart.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't an indictment. This is just, we're talking about a very comprehensive, long list of people. Number 12 is John Lennon.
Yeah. Possibly the greatest songwriter of his generation, possibly among the greatest songwriters of all times.
Mm-hmm.
Vocally, maybe not so much.
I've got a few I could put in that place.
Yeah.
So I most of the things that we have critiques on is order. And then you also have this weird thing where you have, because it's sequential, you're like, you put X artist above
Right.
Y.
Right.
There's a lot of that. And then there are a few glaring omissions that I feel are kind of problematic.
Yes.
Or not necessarily problematic, but like just wrong.
Right.
At least in my book. And we can go over those. In my world, there's underrated folks, there's overrated folks, and then there's just these weird like ranking situations that
I feel like there's a real confusion between vocal performance, vocalist quality, even beyond just technical pipes and chops, whatever, and songwriting skill. And maybe nobody better exemplifies that on this list than number 15, Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Again, one of the greatest songwriters that may have ever lived. Vocalist, number 15, 15th
Singer?
best singer? No.
If you're using the criteria where you're talking about influence and legacy, the fact that Bob Dylan sounds the way that Bob Dylan does is its own like lane of comedy.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's a thing that people do.
Yes.
And a band got a top 10 hit making fun of Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Steelers Wheel, Stuck in the Middle of With You, was a literal joke about Bob Dylan and the way that he sings in his songwriting.
It's also fair to say that one of the most popular Bob Dylan songs is Hendrix's cover of All Along the Watchtower.
Yep.
So you get Bob out of the way and the song can shine some.
Yeah.
We're going to get a lot of hate mail on this one because clearly there are a lot of Bob lovers. And I get that.
Sure.
But to put him on this list with, listen, the next one above him, Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
And
who's below him?
Prince.
At
16.
Prince is number 16.
Yeah, Bob Dylan's between Prince and Freddie Mercury. Does that seem right?
It's
absolutely not.
No,
absolutely
it's not right.
Absolutely.
So do we want to talk about underrated or overrated first? We were kind of in the overrated section right now.
We're talking overrated just because I happen to be on the last page of the thing. Let's go underrated.
I feel like we can ingratiate ourselves.
Yeah, no, we've probably pissed off some people who really loved some folks we've been hacking on.
And listen, my underrated list is significantly longer than my overrated list.
Let's go.
So let's start at the bottom. We'll work our way up. 187, Bonnie Raitt.
Oh,
criminally underrated.
Why? 187? No way.
She should be significantly higher.
Yeah.
Above her at 170, Chris Stapleton.
At 170.
Who is arguably like one of the greatest living vocalists who's still releasing new and interesting music.
Even if you just say country vocalist, he's clearly at the top of the heap. Clearly.
Yeah. But I mean, he's the top of a lot of other lists also, just based on skill and breadth of work. This one pains me a lot. 165, Ronnie James Dio. And if we're getting real in the weeds about it, Ozzy's above Dio.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's right.
No, it's problematic.
If you want to talk about record sales and stuff, sure. We can have a conversation about Ozzy versus Dio. Singers? No. Not even close. 136, Lauryn Hill.
Yeah. How do you put Lauryn Hill at 136?
There's a lot of people higher up on this list that don't deserve to be there, but we're going to get to them.
Let's just note 134 is Axl Rose. 133 is Neil Young.
What a list.
Yeah. It's really complicated to think about this. Loretta Lynn is 132.
Yeah. At 129, Rob Halford.
Yeah.
Again, not even just metal vocalist, Singers.
Singers.
A buddy of mine was talking about one year on Ozfest, they were at a stop and Ozzy had bronchitis, so he couldn't do the Black Sabbath set. So they had Rob Halford come out and do the Black Sabbath set. He had never sang with Black Sabbath before, and as far as I know, he's never done it again. And he did a full 90-minute, 2-hour set with Black Sabbath. No teleprompter, no lyrics, no nothing. He just went out there and just killed it.
Cool.
And they were probably able to do some stuff that Ozzy couldn't do.
Yeah.
Some of that Heaven and Hell era stuff that they did with Dio.
Right.
122 Donna Summer.
Rip
That
off.
seems awfully
That's
low.
a ripoff.
I'm gonna list, and I hate to do this, but number 65 really chaps me regarding that. 118 John Fogerty, way too low.
Too low.
If you're talking about gritty rock vocalists, like he was the prototype.
Yeah.
And he still sounds as good as he did.
Yes.
He can still do it.
Yes.
Original key, he's still got it
Yep.
at his age. Like, criminal that he would be that low.
Now,
Roger Daltrey at 109.
Roger Daltrey at 109. Now, listen, we're in the neighborhood of my first overrated.
Okay.
And I love this dude.
I've crossed like multiple overrateds at this point.
all
But
right.
yeah, please go.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess I have two. But since we're right there, The Weeknd at 110. Amazing songwriter, great producer, one of the great producers of our time. Vocally, I don't know.
He was in the back half of the list. I wasn't terribly mad at that.
Yeah.
Because again, if you're using their criteria, cultural influence, uniqueness, like he's got
I guess
that.
he gets some bump off of that. Now, listen. All right. Counterpoint.
Okay.
106, Bill Withers. Now, Bill Withers has been underrated and unacknowledged. And he did the thing that that is the dream. He made some amazing music, and then he said, that's enough. And he left the business.
I'm good.
And I guess that gets you a 106 slot. When you are aware of that man's catalog and the impact he's had, 106 just doesn't begin to speak to his impact.
Well, and very similar to that at 104, I was really upset. Aaron Neville at 104.
Similar.
That doesn't seem right.
Nope.
And then 4 spots above him, Elton John.
Yeah. 100. Number 100, Elton John. How can that be?
That doesn't seem right.
Not at all.
And
listen, one point above Elton John, 99, is Clyde McPhatter. You heard of him? Do you know who that is? No, not me.
Nope.
Me neither, but surely he edges Elton John.
And again, like there were some really deep cuts, some smaller artists, like Dion was on the list.
I'm for
he
that.
was a rock and roll
That's fine.
pioneer as far as white folks go. As far as white people rock and roll goes, he was really big.
Yeah.
But the 80s, the again, not the 1980s, but the 80s in this list is just rife with
Tough.
Underrated vocalists.
Yeah, it's
you
hard.
ready for this?
Let's go.
87, Diana Ross.
Yes.
86, Michael Jackson.
Unbelievable. Michael Jackson's 86. Unbelievable.
Prince, 16, Michael Jackson, 86.
Yeah. Yeah.
82, Steve Perry. Above Michael Jackson, don't know how I feel about that.
It's hard to think, but yeah. Just on raw chops, maybe, but
Yeah.
tough.
And then at number 80, Chris Cornell.
Yeah, that is criminal.
Not so, like, he's on the list. Great. Kurt Cobain's at 36.
Yeah. Cobain's at 36 and Cornell's at 80.
And, we haven't gotten to omissions yet, but Lane Staley's not on this list.
Right.
At all. And then my last underrated, number 63, Robert Plant. I feel like he deserves to be a little bit higher.
Yeah.
I don't know where. This is one of those things where like you put a gun in my head. Who does he replace? I don't know.
I don't know.
63 just feels low to me.
I don't know. While we're in the 60s, though, I'll just mention that Rihanna is 68, which feels low.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Let me talk about one that I feel weird about, but I'm not sure why.
Okay.
And it's because her work I feel weird about, and I don't know why, and it's Bjork at 64. I'm a Bjork fan. I will go ahead and say I like Bjork's work. I don't know where she's from another planet. Well, Iceland. I don't know. Yeah, I can't rank her because she's on a different scale. Like I can't, it doesn't, there's no, the scale here is 1 through 10 and she's an alphabet letter. Like I can't fit her in, but 64 feels weird. I don't know.
Especially since that, And then, like, again, we're looking at like a sequential list. Robert Plant is one better.
Yeah. Is he? What? Like one better. He's like F better. And I don't know how to score that, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if he's 63, she's blue.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Before we leave the 60s, we got to just note that George Michael is 62, which is also a
Hey,
ripoff. Oh,
I'm gonna get to that.
Oh, okay.
Specifically, he's in the overrated. Not that I don't like George Michael, but it's just that George Michael is above Robert Plant.
Oh,
that was my
flip
gripe.
Them right in place.
I don't know. It feels, again, this is where you start dealing with like the lateral, like who's above who.
Yeah.
All right, 175, Lana Del Rey. What is she doing on this list?
I'm a fan. I actually am a fan, but I'm with you. She's very niche.
Well, but not just that, but like what lane is she filling that some other vocalists on this list aren't?
Yeah. I think she's a little like Bjork. She's on her own planet. She's like a spooky, broken weirdness that's not comparable with anything else. I think of her as a very distinct kind of artist.
Sure.
But yeah, what does that mean in terms of where she fits in this list? I don't know.
And this is not me being like an old hat dunking on new people, but like Billie Eilish is at 198,
and that I think is a ripoff.
So
her contribution is way bigger than 198.
Yeah, that's my gripe. At 158, Carrie Underwood. I've got nothing against Carrie Underwood per se.
Yeah.
I just don't find her as a vocalist terribly interesting.
And in terms of uniqueness of contribution, Carrie Underwood's 158, Robert Smith's 157.
Yeah.
You gonna put those two next to each other? I don't know. Robert Smith, like, it's a different thing. He made a different kind of art.
And again, Carrie Underwood above Dio?
No. Yeah, no.
107 Lou Reed.
You think that's
the amount of people above Lou Reed or below Lou Reed, for that matter? That feels, I mean, you can call it contribution to culture. You can whatever. He does not.
So you feel like I don't get it. Is he high or is he low?
He's too high. He's overrated.
So I think I feel the same way about Lou Reed that I do about Bjork and Lana Del Rey. Like they were just from another planet. And
yeah, but
the one artist who's legitimately from another planet who belongs where they belong on this list is David Bowie.
Yes.
But some of these other ones who didn't quite reach that level of
where is he? He was like 22.
Yeah, he's in the top 30. Yeah.
Yeah, he's on the back. Yeah, the front half.
Something like that.
However you want to call
Something
it.
Like that. But Lou Reed, like, how do you fit him into any context that is like a list of artists? Because he's so out there.
Right.
He's on the Bjork scale.
Yeah, but Bjork can sing.
Yes.
You can put a work of music in front of her and she can do it.
Okay, fair enough. Lou Reed talks.
Yeah, that's my gripe. Lou Reed at 107, too high.
Fair. Okay.
Here's another overrated one that is not, this is not an indictment on this person as an artist or as a vocalist. It is where this person is in the list compared to other people in the similar lane.
Right.
Number 65, Minnie Riperton.
You're going to expand on that.
Yeah. So Minnie Riperton, if that name is not familiar to you, she did the song Loving You. Loving you is easy because you're beautiful. She's also Maya Rudolph's mom, if you didn't know that.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
And it's not, again, this is not an indictment against Minnie Riperton, but it's the people that Minnie Riperton is above. Specifically, Minnie Riperton is above Diana Ross, Darlene Love, and Ronnie Spector.
And Rihanna.
And while we're talking about like weird lists and stuff, yep, Darlene Love is also below Christina Aguilera.
Yeah. I don't like any part of that.
Yeah. Already talked about George Michael being above Robert Plant. That's my only note on that.
It's an issue.
Kate Bush being at 60 feels a little high to me.
Well, you got to think about timing. She has just come off of this resurgence, this resurrection. But as a vocalist, I'm sorry, what number is she at? 60. Yeah, no.
Willie Nelson at 54, above Tina Turner, like above Tina Turner.
Yeah.
So the order is, so you've got Kate Bush at 60, Howlin' Wolf, Lady Gaga, Brian Wilson, Barry White.
And listen, hang on. What is Brian Wilson doing at 57? That's way too low.
And Barry White at 56, Tina Turner at 55, Willie Nelson 54, Mick Jagger at 52.
Yeah.
That's just, it gets real weird. Rod Stewart at 49 feels a little high for me. I love Rod Stewart.
Here's a thing you skipped is Sade at 51. That actually kind of feels right. Honestly, that kind of feels right.
I'm not mad at that
kind of feels right.
What I don't feel good about is number 40, Aaliyah being above Etta James.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Aaliyah's
jive
between
with me.
Etta James and Louis Armstrong.
That feels weird.
Yeah, she's out of place.
If you've got Aaliyah at 40, let's just go through the 40s then.
Okay.
Rod Stewart, 49. Tony Braxton, 48. Linda Ronstadt, 47. Mavis Staples, 46. Ella Fitzgerald, 45.
Now,
James Brown, 44. Ariana Grande, 43. Teddy Pendergrass, 42. Etta James, 41. Aaliyah, 40.
All right, so there are two people that seem desperately wrong there, and it's Aaliyah and it's Ariana. Desperately wrong.
Ariana Grande, objectively, one of the most talented technical singers on this list.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
However,
she's no Ella Fitzgerald.
The company that she's in.
Is she Ella Fitzgerald? Is she better? Is she 4 points better than Ella Fitzgerald?
No.
No.
And I hope people understand what our critiques are here. We're talking about things in the orchestration and the order that they're in.
Yeah. And then
Van Morrison at 37.
Yeah, we break out of the 40s, and then it becomes even more problematic. Van Morrison at 47, Kurt Cobain at 36. Now, impact-wise, Kurt Cobain's hard to beat. Really hard to beat. But as a vocalist?
Yeah.
Not really.
I do think it's funny that Dusty Springfield is above Kurt Cobain, though. That's kind of funny.
I do too. And just above Dusty is Tom York.
Tom York, that feels...
No?
I don't know.
Look, I'm a massive fan, so I can't be objective about that.
I don't know. Tom York above Chris Cornell?
Yes. I'm on board. I'm on board.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this podcast forever.
Podcast is done. Good night.
Oh, man.
And I love Cornell. I love Cornell.
Agree to disagree.
Tom York, there is something about he balances a power and a fragility. That there's something about the way he delivers that's really unique, and I'm a huge fan.
I do love that David Bowie is one below Luther Vandross.
Yeah.
I actually kind of love that,
and I think he would too.
And I don't know how deep into the David Bowie lore you go, but Luther Vandross was one of the main assistant vocalists on the Young Americans record.
Right.
So he was very prominently featured on that.
Yeah.
And I think Bowie would be totally fine with that.
Yeah.
McCartney at 26 feels awfully high, especially considering Mary J. Blige is just like one notch above him. Mary J. Blige is one of those vocalists that like I'm really uncomfortably partial to.
Yeah.
Like so much that like my wife is like uncomfortable with the way that I talk about Mary J. Blige.
All right.
So
let's take one step down from Paul McCartney and just talk about number 27, who I think is in the perfect slot, and that person is Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
I think Dolly Parton at 27th best vocalist of all time. I think that's perfect. I wouldn't want her higher. I wouldn't want her lower. I think that is a perfect call.
The little write-up that she has is incredible.
Yeah.
Clear as mountain air, ripe as a peach, girlish well into her middle age, but also deeply mature. Yeah. Dolly Parton's voice is far more than, as she once memorably described it, a cross between Tiny Tim and a nanny goat.
Yeah.
It's as pure as country gets.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No notes.
No notes.
But yeah, there's Adele at 22 feels a little, I don't know.
I'd give it to her. She has the chops. She
does. And Nina Simone is one notch above. Smokey Robinson is one notch behind. That's my indictment there. Is Smokey should be.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, I mean, Sinatra at 19 feels okay.
Yep.
Elvis at 17, and this is literally like, I mean,
there he is behind you.
17 feels a little high.
It does. I listen, and especially next to Sinatra at 19. Sinatra was such a technician.
Yep.
You know, he as much as the joke is like he'd roll in and do one take and drink and leave. That wasn't how it was. He really studied and worked, and he was, and I think Elvis was especially middle career and later like a lot less technical, a lot sloppier.
Sure.
And leaning on what he'd accomplished in his early career. And I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like that's in the wrong order.
We talked about some people who weren't on the list, Lane Staley being one of them.
Yes.
Some other omissions that I noticed, this is dating me, kind of the era that I was in. Haley Williams from Paramore, I feel like deserves to be on that list.
Yes.
Chester Bennington from Linkin Park deserves to be on that list.
Okay.
Bruno Mars is not on this list.
Right. Here's another one that stood out for me is Sting is not on this list.
That feels odd.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about like a unique voice.
Right.
Like,
and a breadth of contribution.
Yep. Especially considering like other artists that, that made the cut. Iggy Pop being on the list at all feels a little weird.
Iggy Pop being around in any capacity feels weird, but
yeah. Was Amy Winehouse on? I couldn't.
She was. No, she was, and she was pretty high.
There were some really talented folks that I was looking for that weren't there. You put Glenn Danzig on the list, but you don't put Trent Reznor. That feels kind of weird.
Yeah.
And there are newer vocalists that I feel like will inevitably end up on these kinds of lists once they get their due. Rory Rodriguez from D Seeker is one of those guys. Like, he's kind of a one in a million kind of vocalist, but he's still got a lot of road ahead of him to get to that status.
Yeah.
So
I found Amy Winehouse, by the way. She's 83.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And she's are you fine with her being 1 point behind Steve Perry? Feels weird.
It's tough because she was a legitimately talented musician.
Yeah.
If you go Back to Black, she was a significantly established jazz guitar player. She was the real deal. I think her reputation and her infamy overshadowed her
and the way she died.
True talent.
Yeah.
There was a lot of really great picks, and then there were some just kind of ones that were just like,
what are you doing?
It's a fun conversation. This is the kind of stuff that musicians love to sit through and just dig into.
Yep.
And so if nothing else, it made for good content and allowed us to say our piece on
we couldn't not.
Blogsware.
There came a point in this week where it's like, well, this is what the episode has to be about.
Yeah, it has to. Well, let's go ahead and put a link to the list in the show notes so you guys can review it for yourself. If you've got any glaring omissions that we missed, or if there was any sort of like order stuff or stuff, anything that like really like chapped you, please send an email, coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. I want to hear about it.
Who's not on the list and it pisses you off?
Yeah. And who is on the list that makes you even more mad?
Right.
That's just as good.